Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our panel today. It's a pleasure to be here in Sudbury and see some familiar faces as well. We'll first start with the land acknowledgement, please.
Did you turn off the sound on your end?
No. Can you hear us?
I can't hear.
Testing, testing. We'll just give it a sec. No one wants to sit in the front? We won't ask any questions. Oh, do it. Can you hear?
Yes, I can hear now.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So I'm here with Anna Nuello and Melissa Gaynor. Anna's from the Ontario Creates and Melissa's from the NOHFC, and we'll get to a little more information about them, but we're just going to proceed with acknowledging Annie. We would like to begin today by acknowledging the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. Also, we further recognize that Cultural Industries Ontario North, Sion, is located on the traditional lands of the Atik-Mishinganishnaabeg. Thank you, Miigwech. As part of this year's 34th festival, National Bank is the proud presenter of the Cinema Summit this year. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. I welcome everyone. My name is Carolyn Allain. I am the moderator. And I'm a senior account manager with National Bank's Creative Industries Group. We're a leader in offering made-to-measure financing solutions in creative industries. So we have been around actually since 1998. We're pan-Canadian. We have offices in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. Our group was established in 1998, and we've financed over 13,000 Canadian and international productions in the group since then. Before joining National in 2017, I was also a content creator and business affairs specialist and a client of the bank. So I joined the bank for the pension. With this said, I'd like to please introduce Anna Nuello, a consultant with film and TV industry initiatives with Ontario Creates. Anna, did you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been with Ontario Creates for a very, very long time, since 2001. Most of that was spent in the tax credit department with Chris. And then a couple of years ago, I moved to the industry development department, and I'm the lead on the film fund production, but I've also done development and their IDP, and I also do the marketing distribution initiative.
Thank you. You're very busy.
Yes.
And I'd also like to introduce Melissa from the NOHFC. Did you want to say a few words about yourself?
Hi, I'm Melissa Gaynor. I'm Melissa Gaynor from the NOHFC. The NOHFC is an agency of the provincial government through the Ministry of Northern Development. And I've been also with the ministry for a long time. And I've been delivering the film and television program for 6 to 7 years now. The NOHFC has a stream of other programs as well, and that'll be discussed in some of the questions. But I'm very happy to be here and very happy to be a part of this industry.
Thank you. So what are we going to talk about today? So this is a financing panel. So we're going to discuss how to find financing sources to raise money to make your feature production. We can, of course, in the Q&A talk about any type of content you're creating, but being at the festival here, we felt a feature focus might be a good lead, but we can pivot for sure. We'll speak to the importance of your relationship with your triggering broadcaster or distributor, as well as how you can potentially unlock funds with Ontario Creates or the NOHFC. We will also have general discussions surrounding additional funding sources, where you can find money, and speak to the different financing models. So we can speak to domestic, interprovincial co-productions or international co-productions, as well as speak openly about challenges and best practices. And we hope this panel will provide you with the knowledge on where to dig deeper and network in order to move your idea to the screen. So with this said, we're going to touch upon 6 to 7 topics today. And the first topic we'd like to really own in on, which is really important because this is a relation-based business. Nobody wants to work with a jerk. So, everyone wants to work with people who are, responsible and accountable. And with this said, we're going to ask Anna and Melissa what they look for in a producer when a producer approaches them. Who would like to go first?
Looks like Anna's ready.
Anna, you ready?
Sure, sure. Well, we look for experience in a producer. There are a couple of producer requirements. You need to be Canadian and Ontario resident. Those two, I think, are the given. But then on top of that, you need to have some producing experience. So you either have to have produced a feature film that was theatrically released in Canada, or a TV movie or a drama series or a documentary series that was broadcast in Canada. So those are like the minimum requirements that we look for in a producer. But because it's a competitive fund, we also look beyond that. Can you bring a Canadian distributor to the project, a US distributor? Do you have international sales agent? Like, are you going out to the markets and meeting these other people that you can start working with them and really start bringing money to the table? The market is important to us. We are a recoupable advance, so we hope to get that money back from revenue. So we want to make sure if we say yes to this project, that you as a producer understand the business aspects of it, are able to not just complete the film, but then once it's finished, where is it going to go from there? Is there a market? And that is very important to, it speaks to the marketability of the film for us. Now, we also allow emerging producers to apply for the fund. But if you are an emerging producer, you then have to bring on an executive producer who is going to qualify you. So that executive producer has to meet our requirements. And you just call us beforehand. We have a conversation to make sure that the person that you picked as your executive producer will qualify you for our production fund, and actually even for the development fund as well. You would have to have that person pre-approved by us. So we are open to emerging producers. I just want to make that clear. You just have that extra hoop that you have to jump through. But certainly, as you said earlier, we want to make sure that the people that we're working with are professional, are experienced, and understand the business side of filmmaking, not just the creative elements.
Thank you, Anna. So for those who are maybe less familiar with Ontario Creates, what funds specifically, which 2 funds specifically are you referring to where people could go to your website and learn more about the guidelines and the requirements and so on and so forth? Is it the Feature Film Fund?
Well, we have, for the film fund, we have 2. There's development and then there's production. So for development, we have the same producer requirements. And again, if you want to apply for development and you're an emerging producer, you bring on a qualified producer. That has to be pre-approved by us. They have to meet that requirement. We need to ensure that before you apply to us. The other thing too, if you are relatively new, then development may be something for you to consider. There is a better success rate with the development fund than with the production fund. Like the production fund, I think it dropped from 29% success rate. I think it's like closer to 25 now. So it is a highly competitive fund. Development is competitive as well. I don't want to give the wrong idea about, but the success rate is certainly higher. And if you are new to Ontario Creates, it might be a good opportunity for you to get to know us and for us to be able to get to know you through the development stage before you're ready for the production stage.
Anna, does that development fund require a triggering broadcaster or distributor interest in order to qualify for that fund?
For development, no, it is up to $25,000, but again, you just have to meet producer requirement, and if you
Okay.
don't, bring on a qualifying producer.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you so much. You're next.
Yes, so the NOHFC, we do have guidelines, and we are very similar to Ontario Creates, but the purpose of NOHFC is economic development in Northern Ontario. So you do have to meet the basics where you have to be, it's a Canadian production company that is applying. You have to own the rights to produce or exploit the production. You do have to have a distributor or broadcaster on board majority of the times. So we do look at the production strength score. We are looking at your management team. If you've worked in the North before, if the team has worked together before, if you've ever made a production, any successful productions before, and particularly if you've worked in the North. Because what we're looking for is a commitment to Northern Ontario to help us grow the industry here. We've been funding film and television projects and documentaries since 2004. And right now is really an important time because the growth is just, it's crazy right now. As everybody probably knows, we have so many productions going on at the same time. We need more crew, we need more studios. So we want people to come here who, and not just come here, we are trying to grow talent in Northern Ontario as well. So emerging producers, as you said, and seasoned producers can apply. It is a competitive intake round, and it's very competitive. Probably about 1/3 of projects get supported each intake round. And it is, we are comparing apples to oranges. So, you know, we're looking at $25 million television series and a $1.2 million feature film or documentary. So we do look at each project on a case-by-case basis within a competition. So we're looking at particularly your northern benefits are the most important. How much are you spending in the north? How much crew are you getting from the north? Your goods and services that you're getting from the north. Are you, as I said before, have you worked here before? Have you reached out to Scion? Have you reached out to the municipalities that you intend to film in to get them to help strengthen your northern benefits? There's help and assistance out here for you to increase your northern budget and to do as much as your project here as possible, including post-production. So our focus, that's what we're looking at, emerging and seasoned producers who are committed to helping to grow the industry in Northern Ontario.
Thank you. So when you're making a film, as a lender, we see a lot of films and all types of projects. I personally manage, most managers at National manage at any one time up to 40 projects that are different stages of either, you know, raising funds, you know, in production, post, repayment, what have you. So I think it's a really great time to really talk about what is a typical feature film financial plan in Canada for a domestic production. Like, who are the players? Because for those who have not made a feature here, you might not know yet, but if you only have Ontario Creates money and you only have NOHFC money, you won't raise enough money to make your film because they have caps on what percentages they will contribute to your budget. So when you're creating your financial plan, a wonderful thing to do is, as you're doing your research, is really note those caps. So with this said, you will, you're very lucky because you live in Ontario and Canada, and you can access content tax credits if you meet eligibility. Eligibility is triggered by a broadcaster or a distributor. So I call that the trigger. And with that trigger, you can raise other funds through potentially the CMF, if it's a television movie, for example. Then you would potentially go to Ontario Creates, the Film Fund, trying to augment this with the NOHFC potentially. And you would then also probably, of course, have some provincial and federal tax credits. And provincial and federal tax credits, and Anna can hopefully maybe speak to this a little bit since she used to be with tax credits. it's not free money. We think, oh, we're Canadians, we have tax credits. You have to meet eligibility. You borrow against those tax credits. We do a lot of tax credit financing. And do not think for 1 second you might not lose that tax credit. You can. I'm not trying to put the fear of God in you, but I'm saying there's different rules and regulations around the tax credits, spend thresholds, what you can spend in production, what you need to spend in post, your producers, if they're Canadian, all these different things. And it is worthwhile to spend a little bit of time if you're making features or making any content in Canada that's, for broadcast or the screen, to read the tax credit guidelines. You need them to make your content. There's no way you can raise enough money to do anything. Well, typically, there's many ways to do things, but the typical way is also to have tax credits. Now, when you have tax credits, it's not just a tax credit, it's interactive with your sources of funds. So if you have NOHFC, for example, being assistance, it might grind. The Film Fund, Anna, why don't you please speak to the Film Fund and how that interacts, please, on a tax credit calculation? Does it grind? Is it equity? How does that work?
So it does grind. It's a recoupable advance. So we expect to get our money back from revenue. But the fact of the matter is, if the film doesn't make as much revenue, then we may not necessarily see the entire amount paid back to us. Because of that, because it may not be paid back right away, it is considered a grant. The tax credits considers it assistance, and so it does grind down your tax credit.
So tax credits are typically a percentage of your spend. We have two types of tax credits in Canada, and Anna, please correct me at any point. We have content tax credits, which are all those fancy CAFCO points that you need. And then we have service tax credits. You can access both. Service tax credits have a spend threshold. So your budget needs to be a certain amount for you to qualify for that, to apply to that tax credit. But most feature films that I see in my portfolio that I have seen, that I have done, have accessed the content tax credits. And those are a percentage of your labor spend, minus a bunch of stuff, minus assistance and recoupable advances. And that provides you with additional money for making your project. Now, when you make a feature film, you're lucky enough, okay, you've raised 1.2 million. You haven't slept in 6 weeks. You've raised all your money. You're ready to go. You're taking Xanax, but everything is great. The thing is that when you make a feature film, and this is where a lender comes in, is that nobody gives you all the money up front. Do you give all the money up front? No. Do you give all the money up front? No. You have to meet milestones, and those are called drawdowns, triggers. So, you sign your contract, you'll get 20%. You complete principal, you can maybe get another 25%. Oh, rough cut, there you go, here's more money. So anyway, you need someone to manage all that, and that's typically a business affairs person / producer. But with this said, because in order to access tax credits, and this is as complicated as I'm going to go on about this because I don't want to put anyone to sleep talking about tax credits, but they're extremely important to make your movie, make anything you're making in Canada. The thing is, you have to spend all your money, this is a thing, within 60 days of your fiscal year end. So you have to borrow against that money. So some of your final payments from the NOHFC, from your film fund, your tax credits don't pay sometimes 12 months after your fiscal year end, after you've delivered and done your audit and everything. So since that money's not coming in till much, much later, you have to borrow that money. And that's where creative lenders come in. So, and And that money it's show business. There's no business like show business. So you have to consider cost in that level of production. You know, you're going to need a tax credit opinion. You're going to sometimes need a corporate opinion. You are, you know, there's different things you will need on the business side of things. When you borrow money, you have to pay interest, and we all know what's happening with interest. So yeah, there's a cost of doing business at this level. Sometimes, you know, for example, Telefilm wasn't able to join us today, unfortunately, but they have a talent to watch program, and they have a lower threshold entry. And it's a much, much smaller budget. And at that budget, you're making a much smaller film, higher concept, obviously, much smaller film if you have maybe $250,000, but you're probably not going to borrow against it. And because it's all a big grant for the most part, you're probably not going to generate any tax credits from it. So for the feature world, we typically see budgets feature of anywhere from 1.2, 1.7, 2.2. And then once you start getting into the 5, 6 million and so forth, you start seeing interprovincial co-productions. You start seeing international co-productions. And why is that? Because you can only raise so much money in Canada. There's only so many places that can give you money. So what you have to do is go and reach out and go to international markets and meet people you like and you'd like to work with that are like-minded, and you partner with them. And they bring money from their country to the table and they manage that money. And you bring your Canadian money to the table and you manage your own money, but you're all both part of a consolidated budget. So that's how you raise. So if you're here thinking, oh, I want to make a $20 million film. I have the most fantastic script in the world. I believe you, but you probably won't be able to just do it in Canada. You're going to have to go outside of Canada to find additional partners and find additional money. And we have co-production treaties to help with that. And you can look at all of those on the Telefilm website. We have co-production treaties to compete with the States. We don't have a treaty with the States. They don't need a treaty. They have studios. They have more money than God. So we're different. We're in the, you know, we're in a different type of structure sometimes. But if you did want to work with an American, you'd have to, and you want to access tax credits, you would need to work under a co-venture. So it's an actual legal financing structure called a co-venture. Now, before we move on to this, I'm just going to say one more thing about, there's two fantastic primers on structures and that break down the tax credits by province and so forth. It's not issued by National Bank. One's issued by Goodman's, who is a very reputable, they are a very reputable entertainment law firm, and they're excellent. And they have on their website a primer called Hey, So You Want to Produce in Canada. And you can just go to their website and download that PDF. And if you look up Denton's, who are also reputable entertainment lawyers in Canada, pan-Canadian, they also have a primer on business structures, tax credits, available funds. So if you want to go to one spot and just explore very high level all the potential money that's out there for you in Canada to make what you're making, I would highly recommend you go to those websites. I was just wondering, did you want to speak maybe to, does the NOHFC to ever finance productions that are interprovincial co-productions or international co-productions?
Not very often, but we have. In particular, I'm thinking of Indian Horse. They did film in BC and in Northern Ontario. No, we don't see them too often, but we do look at them. It's just that they don't quite fit our funding model right now because we are trying to pull out as many costs in Northern Ontario. So But that being said, we do review projects on a case-by-case basis. So at this point is when we would be explaining to the board of directors who make decisions what a co-production is, why it's not scoring as strong against, you know, other productions that are just doing everything in the north, and if it's a very good project, why we should be supporting it.
Thank you. Anna, how many interprovincial and international co-pros are coming across your desk these days?
Very many. I mean, it's quite a bit that we do see. We are open to international and interprovincial co-productions. We, you know, obviously prefer that the Ontario producer is a majority holder. We have said yes to in situations where the Ontario producer was actually the minority. And you know, really what we focus on always is how much money is being spent in Ontario. And we have our decision criteria grids actually in our guidelines. So you can find it on our website. And it explains exactly how we look at a project, what kind of questions we ask, and how it breaks down, what percentage is given, you know, what the weight is given to each section. The Ontario spend portion is actually worth 40% of your overall score. So it's quite significant. You know, we can have an international co-production and they're still spending $3-4 million in Ontario. So that is going to be attractive to us. We've also had productions where, you know, the jury absolutely loved the project, wanted to say yes to this project. They, in fact, weren't spending a lot of money in Ontario, but the contribution that we give is linked to that Ontario spend. So if you're not spending as much, then we are going to be giving you a lot less money in our contribution. So, I mean, really, we're open to it. It's you're perfectly fine to apply if it is an international co-production. And, you know, sometimes it's even more attractive. You know, we had one project where we were it was the first international co-production with a particular country. So it was kind of interesting to be able to be the first one out the gate. On the flip side, you know, when the Ontario producer had to provide us with the final report, it was, you know, pulling teeth from the other country, because they were going through growing pains that we've already, you know, I think the Telefilm Canada office, the co-production office in Montreal, I mean, they understand it completely. They're the ones that would have to sign off on an international co-production. Without that sign off from Telefilm, we would not be able to give you money for that. So it's simply about following the rules for an international co-production and an interprovincial co-production to make sure that you are Canadian content. That's what we look for. But like I said, we are very open, and I see it often. We have a lot of actually we actually had a record. We had a film, The Swearing Jar. Is it playing at Cinéfest? I think it is. I think it is, yes. And now
it's a gala.
That's a co-production between Ontario and, I want to say, Manitoba, you know. But I mean, it's something that was shot here. I believe probably posted in Manitoba. Typically that's what happens. If you post one place, you shoot in another place, and the costs are shared. So I mean, we welcome it. Just keep, you know, always make sure that your Ontario spend is up high.
And the NOHFC has the same requirement where you have to be the majority shareholder.
So majority shareholder. So we're talking about interprovincial co-productions and international co-productions. And what Melissa and Anna are sharing with us is they're governed by treaties. You need to have certain spends in requirements, that you need to have certain spends in one jurisdiction and different requirements in another. It also informs your choice of nationality on cast. So it's important to really understand that. It also allows you to collect content tax credits, because if you're having an international co-pro, you won't meet all the special CanCon points, but under the accreditation of Telefilm, that you are in fact an accredited international co-production, there's special permissions. So that's why it's very important to do that. Now, interprovincial co-productions, if you're starting out, might be also an interesting thing to consider. little less of maybe a barrier, international barrier. You know, it might be easier for you to go and hang out and meet people in Quebec than maybe France, maybe not. But the interprovincial co-productions are really, it's the same concept, right? It's just they have their own rules. So
Can I also bring up something else that we do have? Again, it's for experienced producers who meet the producer requirements, because we have to have requirements for everything that we do. But we do have something called IF, which is an international financing forum that we have every year, that producers can apply for. And it really is an opportunity for producers to meet, like the first day it's about producers meeting other producers, other international producers. And then day two, it's meeting the people with money. So it's meeting the sales agents, meeting with the Netflix and the Amazons. And so it is also something else that that people who have the experience behind them and they want to start growing out of just the domestic market and start getting into the international market, that would be something to take a look at. And you can find the information on our website.
Does the NOHFC have any type of training initiatives? Or, I mean, obviously you're a big part of this, which is fantastic. Is there anything else that people maybe can explore? You must have quite a bit of information on your website.
Like in regards to co-productions, or just in general?
Just in general, like as they're exploring, you know, everything there is to know about the NOHFC, where's the best place to find all that?
So they're nohfc.ca or .com, I think they both work, is where you get the information. We're only online. We don't have brochures or guidelines on paper. It explains the mandate of the NOHFC, the different programs that we have, and then it has the guidelines and the intent of the film and television stream. But there isn't a lot of information on there other than that. There are some Q&As, and then there is the deeming and mentoring policy that we have. Other than that, it's working with staff at the NOHFC and the Ministry of Northern Development to talk in more detail about your project and to go over what we're looking for in more detail.
And that's a really great point that I'd like to raise. I went through the National Screen Institute years ago, and Shirley Vercuzzi, who was our mentor at the time, shared the most interesting fact with me that has stayed with me since then, which is, do not show up on someone's doorstep not knowing who they are. Don't, and she was a little more direct about it, but it makes sense. Like, let's say you're approaching the NOHFC. It's important to really understand what they're about, what their mandate is, what their guidelines are. The same thing with Ontario Creates. If you're approaching, for example, the CBC or Telefilm, you want to do your research first. And if anything, by putting that best foot forward, it just makes you look smarter. Like, who's kidding who, right? And another thing that's really interesting that I learned through Shirley, and I still share to this day with clients, is, let's say you want to make a film about X subject matter, and you know this film just like it, It's important to be honest with yourself. You need to be honest about what budget you're kind of working in. So, when the festivals come and you look at the films and you look at Canadian festivals and all their films, you find similar films with similar genre, tone, what have you, and you look at their credits. You watch the credits, because the credits will tell you who gave that film money. And you read the guides that the film festivals are issuing and so forth. And you look at, who the distributor is, who the broadcaster is. And that is a great, great way to be project specific, because I've always felt that there's so much information. And, the last, 6 years I've been at the bank, I've seen many, many projects, many financial plans. And I can tell you that there is not one that's the same. There's some that are similar, but not one. It's really, truly, financing is a creative practice, and you need to be resilient, because it's not easy. And it's important to really take advantage of the Annas and the Melissas of the world and their knowledge base, but, you know, show up knowing what you're looking for from them, because they're very, very busy people trying to help a lot of people. So with this said, I'd like to lead into the next topic here. I don't know how we're doing for time. We're good. Just keep talking all afternoon. 2 hours. So we're going to talk now, if it's cool with everyone, about best practices. And when we talk about best practices, it's really, really important because this is a business. I know we're all, you know, we're creators and very intelligent and wonderful people, but it's a business. So let's talk about best practices when interacting with Ontario Creates and the NOHFC. That's the do's and don'ts, okay? So this is a listen up, okay. Anna, you go first.
We have 3 information sessions a year. So I do suggest that people attend that information session. It's always followed by a Q&A. So it really will help you, along with, you also have to read the guidelines, but the 2 of them together will really help you understand the program. There are requirements. I mean, I mentioned earlier about the producer requirements. We also have minimum budget thresholds. So, you know, Telefilm's Talent to Watch, which was raised earlier, will not work with us because you have to have a minimum budget of $1 million. The diversity stream has a lower minimum threshold, but the standard stream is $1 million for a drama, $600,000 for a documentary. So there are all these requirements that must be met, and it's really important for you to understand what the requirements are before you apply. I sometimes get applications for a $300,000 film. It's like already out. They just wasted their time and mine. So we are available. You can call us anytime. But like I said, we do have these information sessions, which are actually, it's on our website. There is one with a link to our YouTube channel, and it breaks down the fund and what to expect. So it's really important for you to understand the eligibility. And then when you're actually filing the application, please read everything and follow everything that we request. I mentioned earlier about the Ontario spend being worth 40% of your overall score. There is a document that you must submit to show that. A couple of times we've received applications where they didn't submit that document. So automatically, I'm not going to put them through to jury. There's no point because they've already lost 40%. So it really is important to read through, to understand, to call us. And like I said, we're accessible, and you're better off putting, like, you know, my job is to make sure that we're getting great applications that are coming in. So I want to help you be able to put in that great application. And even if you do put not so great application in, or if you do go to jury and you are rejected, we also have these feedback calls in between, and we will talk to the producer and say, you know, this is where you can improve, because we want you to be able to come back with a stronger application. But that is, you know, working with us and understanding the funds. That's important.
I was just going to mention something before we go to the NOHFC. So when you're doing these, you know, you have this film and you think, oh, it's the film. My film's brilliant. Of course it is. But it's not just about the film. It's about meeting the mandate of who's giving you money. If it's a selective stream, you need to, those are check marks. When you're essentially writing a pitch. It's not just the film. It's a pitch. It's an entire package. And sometimes there's like the criteria page. Make sure you're spending more time on criteria that's worth more in the evaluation, because essentially people sit down and they go point by point and they grade you on they're selective streams. So it's important to remember that it's not just the creative, but it's an entire package and it's a pitch. Melissa?
Okay, so everything Anna said for sure, because we are very similar. We have very similar processes and requirements. Communication is key. It's not mandatory that you talk to me before you submit your application, but it's probably in your best interest because I can get to know you, we can talk about your project, and uploading things online doesn't always work perfectly. So if I get an application, it's missing stuff, and I've talked to you and I know it should be there, I will reach out and find out what happened. If this is an application I've never seen before, I've never talked to this person, half the stuff is missing, it probably is not going to go forward to the next step. Knowing the guidelines, you know, it's very short and sweet on the website. Get to know the guidelines. Even there's a map showing the Northern Ontario boundaries. Don't ask me if Barrie is in Northern Ontario. And okay, I have to say, my favorite question of all time at TIFF a couple of years ago was, do you have a hotel in Northern Ontario? I'm sorry if you're online, the person who asked that, but I did not know how to answer that. I'm like, yes, we have a hotel in Northern Ontario. We have a lot in Northern Ontario to offer. So yeah, the key is communication and working with each other. NOHFC is a very small agency. It's the Northern Development Advisors that help deliver the programs across Northern Ontario. We're very accessible. For film in particular, I'm the contact. There's one person, it's me to reach out to. So whether you go to the info, basic information email, or directly to me, it's all questions for film are gonna come my way. So yes, and just making sure you fill in the application form properly. And the NOHFC film application is it's way more onerous than any of our other programs. The other programs, we just want a high level 1-2 page application on what you're doing. Fill it out, send it in, let us assess if it's eligible. Film, you have to submit everything, all of the supporting documents, because it gets reviewed right away and we determine if it's strong enough to move forward. So make sure you upload everything that's required. It's all outlined in the application form and on the website. And if you're not uploading something, let us know why. Put it in your application. Say, I don't have a distributor yet, but this is who I'm working with, and then we can talk through that. So we like to work with people.
It's a relationship. So when we started the session, I said, you know, nobody wants to work with a jerk, right? And it's true, you know, you don't call someone and kind of, you know, stomp your feet. Well, you know, I don't have this. I'll give it to you later. It doesn't matter. You're just not gonna, you're not gonna be in the queue. You know, it's important. It's a very stressful business. Everyone's very busy. It's important to, you know, always at all times remember that, you know, this is not the last project you're going to make, and it's about building relationships and building trust. And that's done over time, and you have to prove yourself. And if you're emerging and you do not have, you know, experience, that's okay, because there's a lot of people with experience there that are looking for creators who are, you know, looking to get into this business, that have strong creative and so forth. It's really that no woman is an island. I've rebranded that. No woman is an island, and you know, making content is the ultimate canvas, right? It involves everything. It involves, you know, picture, sound, business. You know, it's magnificent, and that's why we all love it, right? So in terms of best practices, as a lender, I want to speak a little bit to best practices, and I think it's very important to understand reporting, cost reporting, filing your taxes, doing things in a timely manner that are required. Ideally, this is so important because the longer you delay filing your tax credits, the more interest you're going to be paying. And when you're thinking about it, on, like, let's say a $4 million tax credit loan, your interest payment at these rates could be almost $20,000 a month, because you got a bit, you know, you were a little tired and you didn't put in the tax work that you needed to. that $20,000 a month is $20,000 a month that you could be putting on screen, because we are only as good as the last project we make. So it's really important to be fiscally responsible. And if you do not like doing those things because you are more of a, creative focused person, that is absolutely fine. There are people out there that can help you. And it's well worth the money, because by delaying, let's say by 3 months, that's $60,000 that you could have had in your pocket. You could have paid yourself more corporate overhead that could have held you over while you tried and raised more money for your next project. So if I would say best practice is to be timely in what you need to do on your business affairs side of things.
Can I just jump in and say, I saw
Yes.
this more on the tax credit side, but when it comes to producers aren't always on top on their paperwork, but it's for a lot of production companies, the business affairs department is a vital part of that company. And I can't tell you, it seems to be like a revolving door, and it causes many headaches, many delays. That is an important part of filmmaking. If anyone out there doesn't want to be a producer, create a business affairs company and grab all these producers as your clients, because understanding not just the tax credits, but all of the funding requirements, the drawdowns, figuring out your cash flow, how much money you need in week 1, week 2, all that stuff. If you have the right, and as a producer, if you don't have that, hire the right person to take care of that, and you will save yourself a lot of money in interest rate.
Thank you.
Oh, we're the same way. If we're talking about post-approval, you need to have one contact person who is going to read the letter that comes to you with everything that's required in order to access your funding and to get the legal agreement signed. It's quite lengthy, but it's not anything that shouldn't be known, because you had to give those documents to us at the application period. You need to realize that you're not getting your money after you get approved. You're getting your money pretty much once you're ready to go, and then once you've incurred costs. Like, you have to spend that money to get our money first. And that's really difficult for a lot of production companies, but it's just really important for them to be aware that you need to spend the money to get the money reimbursed back to you, and that there are a lot of reporting requirements, particularly I think probably a bit more for us because we have northern stuff that we have to report on. And it's not to be difficult, it's because we are also audited on how we're spending public dollars and giving it to production companies to make films. So we have to make sure it's going to where it's supposed to be going to. So a lot of paperwork, a lot of reporting, but also staff who are there to help you through it.
And it's important because through that reporting, you are supporting the NOHFC in their continued ability to draw that money from their ministry and provide it to your sector. So it's some people go, oh, the paperwork. You gotta give it a little more respect, I think, because it's really, without it, you're not probably going to be making very much unless your Uncle Harold is super, super rich and wants to give you money. So as a lender, you kind of go, oh, you're a bank, you're only actually looking at me and talking to me right now because I'm on this panel. Everyone often, many people do not like banks, but we're a specialized lender. So most of the people in our group are from industry. So when you're doing a project, when you're trying to raise money for a project, many of our clients come and speak to us. Oh, have you heard of distributor, S? Yeah. Does he pay on time? Yeah. I'm also talking to distributor Y. Oh, we're having issues we're pan-Canadian. We have a lot of files. So if you're shopping around for money and you go to market, you need to please remember that not all money is good money when you go to distributors or broadcasters or what have you. Because if someone says, oh yeah, I've just started a distribution business, I'm gonna give you $500,000 minimum guarantee towards your film for the rights in rest of world. Okay. And you come to me, kind of go, oh, I've raised all the money for my film. I'm like, all right, you have NOHFC. We know them. They're great. They pay. Ontario Creates, again, fantastic. They pay, okay, because we're lending you money against your paper, right? So we're going to work with you when you come to us to mitigate risk on your file, because if distributor whatever doesn't show up with the money at the end, who's on the hook for the money you borrowed to make the film? You are. So you're going to be paying back $500,000 till you die, because this guy was not good money. So that's where your creative lender comes into play. One of the reasons that is super valuable. And we also are very, very good with cash flows. We see a lot of cash flows, and we're very high level. We often work with cash flows and kind of go, okay, this cash flow the producer gave us is great. You're thinking your loan amount is going to be this much. Sure. Have you considered that it's a first production and your HST is going to be out at least 6 months? Have you considered all the bonds that you're going to have out with ACTRA, DGC, whatever? That's money that's not represented in your expenses. So we work with the producer and the business affairs person to really, truly, truly make sure you have enough money to shoot out your picture, right? So it's important. You can't run out of money. And we're structured in a certain way that you don't get all your money up front. You have to come in and you have to kind of be within your anticipated cash flow, you know? So you have to submit a cost report. We have a dialogue about where you're at with your receivables, pulling the money in from NOHFC and Ontario Creates and Telefilm, maybe Crave at Bell, you know? And we make sure that you're doing your reporting, that you're filing your tax credits. So we kind of act a little bit, in a sense, as an executive producer capacity. And we're not executive producers on your project. We're certainly not credited as such, but we have done a lot of projects and we can provide a lot of know-how and a lot of support, because the most important thing when everyone's giving you money is what? Pardon? That you deliver. That you don't overspend all your money, and that's why things are structured in drawdowns and so forth. They want you to be happy, but you have to deliver, because only when you deliver do you trigger the remainder of the money. You're compliant with the money that's already been given to you, and you can access your tax credits. So when you're working with your lender and things are going offside, and I have to tell you, pretty much every production goes offside at some point. I don't know how anything is made. It's a mystery, it's a miracle, but I guess things just do. But don't be afraid to talk to your lender or to Ontario Creates or to the NOHFC. I'm sure they've seen it before. I'm sure they can provide you with some support and direction on the best course of action, because everyone's in it with you, right? But you have to deliver. So if you're working and you're kind of going way over budget, you're going to get into trouble. So with this said,
those are really important points, because NOHFC and the other funders, were not here to save you when you can't pay your crew on Friday. You can't send an email saying, I need money now, and think that it's going to go through in 24 hours. That it's not our role. And it also gets noted if you have future projects that the management was not strong coming back to us again, because we can't do emergency payments, and probably won't if you're acknowledging that you're already in trouble with your cash flow.
We, as lenders, this does happen quite often, and this is why we're specialized, where, you know, something got pushed, they were anticipating in their cash flow pulling in a payment, but, you know, let's say a lead came down with COVID, We saw that a lot. So that payment got pushed, and their cash flow was a little bit thinner than we anticipated when we structured the cash flow and created the offer. And we can do things, and we do things to help, because our goal is that you keep your production going and that you meet payroll. So we can do emergency overdrafts, but there always needs to be a form of repayment. So having these partners involved in your production allows you to have support to stay on track, basically. So with this said, I think we have 5 minutes till the Q&A. Can we talk a little bit about the importance of staying on budget with, like we talked about, what Melissa was just saying is that, you know, you have a drawdown coming and you have to make your payroll. So you're going to come to her and say, give me my money faster. She's saying, well, we're not really set up that way. Figure it out. But then there's your overall budget, right? So your overall budget, let's say, is $1 million. And let's say you come in at 1.2 million. How does the NOHFC react to that? Do you give the production more money?
Oh, no, after approval, we don't give, no.
My
Think
point
about what you
being-
just said there. After approval, you will not get more money. You've been approved for probably $500,000 and you can't request more. So you have to work with that. Anything over budget, and it's even in the legal agreement, is at your own risk and your own expense. So it's important that you stay on budget. And the other
Yeah.
thing is, once to access your first advance, which is a 25% drawdown, it's your only advance, you have a signed legal agreement that has your budget in there, and any changes made after that, it's a process. It's government funding. You have to fill out a change request form. It goes through probably 6 people for approval. And one of the things we look at when you're changing your project after approval and after you've signed the legal agreement is, would this affect your score in that competition round? And if it does, would we have funded you? And if the answer was no, then we don't allow those changes to occur, which then puts you in default. But that being said, we do—
And they can ask for the money back.
Yeah, we do work with people. We do ask why things have changed. There's often good reasons. Like, we're not hardcore and say no, but we do look at all of those changes, and if it's a major impact on the project.
When you have a budget, you have your sections A, B, C, D, and your contingency in a traditional chart of accounts, future budget. Your budget totals never change. You might have variances. You might have spent more or spent less, but what you've listed as your budget doesn't change. And one of the reasons as a lender it shouldn't change is because your tax credit opinion that we're loaning against is based on those spends. So you need to, stay the course, and of course things change. Sometimes things do go over budget, of course, but then we're gonna have a conversation about how you're gonna cover it. So, and what's great about working with a creative lender is that they have the expertise to, help you along that road, to help you find solutions and maybe make some recommendations. And also maybe flag it as it's maybe going to happen, because we see a lot of things and we can kind of know when maybe a production is kind of over budget. You can't hide it, you just can't. And is there anything you want to talk about in terms of staying on budget and being over budget, and how Ontario Creates reacts to that?
It's similar to NOHFC. You're not going to get more money from us. What we offer in the beginning is all that you're going to get. I will say though, in response to the industry, what producers have been saying to us, this year we actually changed our drawdowns to give more money up front. So now when we contract, we give you 50%, and then when principal photography is completed, we give you 40%. So now in a very short period of time, you actually have 90% of our funds. So we did that to help the producer. We also eliminated one of the drawdowns to add to the end of principal photography. So there's even less paperwork for you and for me to go through, which is always a plus. But in order for me to give you that 40%, you will send me an interim cost report, and I will see whether you've gone over. And it's the same thing. We have to make sure that the money is covered. I had 2 productions earlier this year, both hit with COVID. Both went hundreds of thousands of dollars over just for production because of COVID. And in both cases, Telefilm stepped in, and they had to still put in producer fees to fill in that gap, to satisfy me so that I can say, okay, I can give you the next drawdown. But it is important that this is something that we do look at variances, and then we don't want any kind of surprise as well. Although in both cases, the producer had already contacted me to say, we've temporarily shut down, but we're going to go back in a week. It's COVID. There's nothing that they can do when they followed all the protocol and were as safe as they possibly could be.
We would require people. There was a short-term compensation fund administered by Telefilm. Cover, the deductible was 15%. All loans required that. It's not going to be around forever. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's important for you to remember that staying on budget is key, and whatever you promise is what you should deliver, and you should deliver on time because it's going to cost you more. And that's it in a nutshell.
I was going to say, it's not just that it's going to cost you more, but if you don't deliver with us and you're so far overdue, you run the risk of going into default with us, which means that not only do you have to pay back the money to us, but you will never get other money from us again until you resolve that issue from us. Now, I mean, very, very few people go into default, but it does happen. So you don't want to be in that situation with us, and you do have to deliver everything that you say you're going to deliver.
It definitely costs you more with your lender because you're needing to amend, and we need to go back to legal. We need to amend your offer and so on and so forth. But should we move on to the Q&A now?
So if anyone has a question, they can just come to the microphone.
Okay, so if anyone has a question, you can come up to the mic, or I can. Sure, you could bring it around too. And honestly, there's no, it's a conversation. There's no stupid questions. We're here to help support, so don't be shy.
It was more just if they wanted to speak directly to Anna as well, they'd be in the frame.
Oh, okay.
If someone wants to ask a question directly to Anna, go up to the mic.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Haha.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good
I have
afternoon.
a couple of questions. Melissa, one of our last BAM tours, you had mentioned that I think we had 6 or 7 that were coming up. And you said these are all ready to go into production in the next year. Is that something that you consider when you're looking at a project? Was it just that just is the way that it happened at that particular time, that they were ready to shoot? I think at that time it was even a shorter time frame, probably 6 to 8 months.
So during the intake rounds, I will look at the production schedule and first of all decide if it's a good fit for that intake round. If they're, say we had somebody apply for a project that they're producing in September 2023. That was at the July 31st deadline. Well, I didn't put it through as eligible. And I contacted them and said, your project is eligible, but we don't want to commit funds that far out. So come back in the next intake round or the intake round after that, because we have 4 intake rounds per year. So the projects that go to the board for review usually are within 6 to 8 months timeline of production. I have to say, I've had conversations the last couple of days. It always changes, and there are so many reasons why, often good reasons, but that might attribute to why there are like 6 or 7 projects being made right now in the same areas, because those were not the production budgets or schedules that we were given for at approval. So I don't know if that answers your question,
It
but
does.
we try to have projects go in timely manners and not all at the same time.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm not quite sure if all of you will answer or not. I know when we look at production, there's ebbs and flows. We're on Ontario Create meetings every Friday morning. You know, production slows down at this time of year and things like that. Is the interest rate starting to have a bit of an effect on people looking at whether or not this is a good time for them to go into production? Like you're mentioning that 1 or 2 degrees up might, is that affecting them in looking at this? Like, are you feeling it yet, or are we?
Well, I mean, you know, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. If you have people that want to give you money to make your project, you know, I personally feel you need to jump on it and take advantage of that opportunity. It's just going to cost you more to finance it. So, however that, whatever that means for your project, depending on the type of project it means, it might mean less shooting days. It might mean less corporate overhead. It might mean, you know, that's where financing becomes very creative. You know, many years ago, they made many things with very high interest rates, and but they are going up, and it is the cost of doing business, and it's set by the Bank of Canada, not National Bank of Canada. So don't yell at me in the hall. But you have to, we've got to keep going, right? And, you know, we're seeing so many people that are pivoting as content creators, doing amazing things, you know? As things are oversubscribed and so forth, people are turning their ideas into amazing podcasts and, you know, turning to other platforms to do what they need to do, you know? So I highly recommend you don't let anything stop you. Yeah.
Good. The other one was about workforce development that I think we can talk about tomorrow morning, but you really kind of emphasized the need for those accountants and things that can even work with the production on the small part of it to kind of ease their professionalism for the big part of it.
Like if you're a new producer coming to the bank, you know, you're like, oh, you know, the bank will never loan me $1 million for my first feature. I don't own a house. I don't have any, you know, anything. I don't have any bonds. I'm a poor filmmaker. It's not true. We can, because we mitigate risk by creating a package that supports your delivery of the project. And one of those risk mitigators, is being supported by strong producing business affairs experience.
Wonderful, because we've had people ask when they're filming, you know, is there anybody local that can take care of some parts or some aspects of it so that we can concentrate on the credits and everything else. So that's something that I think from a workforce development we can look at in Northern Ontario to at least start to build, at least I'm in Timmins, Ontario, so at least this, you know, the lower parts of the bookkeeping and the accounting that becomes familiar with film, so that they can at least help ease some of that pressure on the bookkeeping end of it.
And yeah, it's bookkeeping, like the bookkeeping is your accountant, but the person who really understands the interdependency, the codependency between your different financial sources. You know, certain people come in first. Some people like the film fund likes to be last. You know, when you're raising money for your film, don't go to the film fund first. They always want to be the last in, for example. And, you know, understanding how different funding sources function, as well as how to meet the criteria, and as well as managing all the different requirements for your drawdowns to keep the money coming in. Because the best thing you can do to keep more cost on screen for you and pay less interest is to bring in your payments from the NOHFC and Ontario Creates and file your tax credits as soon as possible. That is the best way to put more money in your pocket.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been really informative. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? So, yeah, for sure.
Hi, how's everybody today? Good. So my question is for all three of you, and it relates to, we've been talking a lot about live action filmmaking primarily, I think, as that's probably been the kind of, so my question for you is, does your funding, what you do either at the NOHFC level, the bank level, or at Ontario Creates level, would that involve animation production, whether feature animation production, would that be included in that as well? Or even animation television series style production? Would that be something that your outfits would be interested in, partnering with?
For the NOHFC, definitely, yes. When we have supported animation, I'm very proud to have supported Gallus in Sudbury and the productions they've done. Lakeside Entertainment in, maybe not Lakeside.
It's Lakeside.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Are you with Lakeside? Okay. We've been working with Lakeside. Nice to meet you. I'll meet you after.
Yep.
In North Bay, and we have another small application in right now for animation. So yeah, we have definitely looked at it, and we'll continue to help build that industry too.
What about at the bank level?
So at the bank level, we not only do content in term financing, we do a whole bunch of stuff, including financing studios, financing equipment, anything that touches creative industries from a commercial level. We also do that type of financing.
That's really great.
Yeah. Ontario Creates.
And Ontario Creates, we do animation at the feature film level. We did Breadwinner, which went all the way to the Academy Awards. So we just don't see them very often. We've got one that's in the works right now. It'll be a while before it's ready because, of course, animation just takes so much longer.
Forever, yeah.
Yeah, so we definitely do that. We don't do television series. That was the other question that you asked about animated series. We don't do television series. We do have a digital fund that can support web series, though.
Okay.
And in animation, there's different tax credit initiatives that you can access, and as well, if you're doing your work out of the GTA and so forth, there's additional tax credits and so forth. And but we are seeing, in the kids space. I don't know if your feature is for adults or kids.
I work in both feature and television series, and all age groups. I've currently working for adult-oriented,
Okay.
primetime related stuff, but
Yeah.
also kiddie.
We're just seeing a reduction in the kid market. A lot of, the big streamers are pulling back
Yeah.
on kid programming,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a big push to go after the anthology style filmmaking these days. It seems to me, at least that's the trend in the industry. What seems to be like. So, okay. Well, thank you.
And if I could
Oh, yeah.
comment, then I just wanted to comment too. Me? Oh, I was just going to take this opportunity to say that you reminded me that the NOHFC likes when the producers partner with post-secondary institutions and organizations in Northern Ontario, and that you made me think of that because Cambrian has the animation program,
teach it.
Canadore has programs, so there are post-secondary colleges, universities across Northern Ontario that have programs that feed into the film and television industry, and we really look for producers to partner with those schools.
I appreciate that. I teach at the Cambrian College program as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place. But
Busy.
Yes, but very. But thank you. Thank you very much for your answers.
You're welcome. Michelle,
Hi.
you're supposed to be in Ottawa.
I know. I'm not. I was supposed to be at the Animation Festival in Ottawa. Yeah, exactly. My name's Michelle McIver, just because I do a lot of work with folks on fund application writing and that kind of stuff. But I do a lot in kids media, so I know we're talking features here, but for animation, Shaw Rocket Fund is an investment fund, and they have a partnership with CMF that's specifically for digital animation. So the budgets tend to be a little bit lower, but I have some clients that have had tremendous success with the program, even making it like a proof of concept series. There's a lot of things around it, but that's a really great one for digital animation.
You're probably looking at, the $500,000 level
Yeah.
on that. And it's called we refer to it as a digital forward financing model.
Yeah. And what was mentioned as well about digital web series funding, you have Ontario Creates, right? It's called the IDM Fund. So it's the Interactive Digital Media Fund, and it does linear funding. So there's things that you need to do to have a more competitive kind of fund. There's the Bell Fund, does a lot of that kind of funding as well. And they each have their things. Last thing I'm going to say
you.
is earlier, they were talking about best practices, and you were talking about why it's important to understand what the fund is. Never ever take cookie cutter, take what you've applied to for Ontario Creates and stick it in NOHFC or Telefilm. You need to look at the mandate, right? And you need to speak to that, because if you don't, then, you know, it doesn't meet what's important to them. So that's my big.
Well said. Bravo.
Ditto what Michelle said.
Very good. So there's many things. So I'm just curious, maybe a show of hands if everyone wants to play. How many people here are trying to make a feature film? Oh, Devin. How many people here are trying to make something for TV? Okay. And how many people here are in, doing digital creativity? Okay. Cool. You have one? Digital creativity?
How many people in here are resources for you guys to work with?
Very good. We're seeing the world is changing, and traditional feature is it's a Rolls Royce, absolutely. But there's so many other ways. If you're meeting too many financial barriers in raising your money, like Michelle was saying, there's so much more you can do. Proof of concept, maybe you're going to do a web series. You're going to raise money through, let's see, CBC. I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. CBC GEM. You can access the federal tax credit, not the provincial yet. You might have a little bit of money from the Shaw Rocket Fund, depending on what you're doing. But there's a documentary. Yeah, there's many. So anyway, I'm here definitely till tomorrow. So if anyone wants to come up and talk to me about anything to do financing or brainstorm or get some, maybe feedback on some additional sources or where you can look for funding. We see a lot at the bank. It'd be my pleasure to have a quick chat with anyone. And how long are you here for?
I live here. I'm here forever.
Okay.
I'm accessible with all of Cinéfest. And afterwards by phone or video conference.
Anna?
I am actually doing an information session on October 13. If you go on our website, you can register for that. So just putting that out there.
Is it free, Anna?
Oh yes, everything we do is free. And it's going to be via Zoom. So I invite people to register and attend on October 13.
That's great for those who are more emerging, venturing down this path. It's so important to attend these information sessions, and when you're in them, I would just always encourage you to be project specific. You can't learn everything. You have to think of the specific project you have in mind, in my opinion, and just move that forward. Roll that boulder up that hill. That's it. So with this said, Devin, is there anything else? No? Well, we want to thank the technical support of the panel today. Thank you, and Samuel for organizing. Thank you very much, and Devin. And all of you for attending, and of course, Anna and Melissa, thank you so much for your time. Yes.
Thank you for inviting me.
And anyway, let's keep talking, and we obviously wish you the best of luck with all your endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for moderating.